The New 52 has been the subject of much discussion around here at Comics Pals headquarters, and we couldn't think of a better way to close that off than with a book club dedicated to the New 52. And what a coincidence that you guys have decided that the book that we would be discussing for our book club is the book that ended the New 52 and ushered in a new age, the rebirth age, that being Justice League Darkseid War.
DC Comics presents.
Yes. Always have to include that. DC Comics presents the New 52's Justice League Darkseid.
Correct. Ending the New 52 era and restarting with Rebirth.
That's just a little bit too long.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Heard that before.
Have you? Sorry.
When I look in the mirror.
We've got to go ahead, Cale.
I was going to say, do you know if we were holding the line at $2.99 at this point? Do you remember?
I don't think so.
No, they were solid $4 to $6. Yeah.
Yeah, it started hitting.
No, surely not that much.
No, the $3.99 for sure.
For sure, but there were some bigger issues, so they were a little more.
Okay.
We've got a full house, as you just heard. We've got Cale.
What's up, hot dogs?
Marco.
What's up, Darkseidians?
Tyler.
Are they called Apocalyptians? I don't know what they're called. Hi, guys.
And I'm Sean. Thank you for being here with us, whether you are live or in the future. Make sure that you are hitting that like button. I want to see a big number, big time number, big support today for the Darkseid War conversation. There's been a lot of preparation. I've seen a lot of conversation on the Discord. You guys have really taken to discussing the New 52 alongside us all September long, and this is the way that we are rewarding that. So you know, this book was voted on by our patrons at patreon.com/thecomicspals. You can head on over there after this, because we are going to be announcing the next theme that the book club will encompass. So stay tuned for that a little bit later down the line. But before all that, let's talk Darkseid War. Now, this was an 18-issue event. I guess you could call it an event. I think of it as an event.
Surely. Even
though the bulk of the event actually takes place within the confines of the Justice League series that was already being published. For this, we read Justice League 40 through 50. So the last 11 issues of Justice League. And then there were also 7 tie-in issues. 6 that feature the various Justice League members who become empowered throughout the event. And then 1 that is Darkseid War special, but oddly is chapter 9 of the event. So you kind of like have to buy it. I don't know how that's a tie-in, but okay. That threw me off a little bit. Did you guys each get the chance to read the tie-ins that weren't chapter 9?
Yes.
Yeah, like the solo hero books, right?
Yep.
Yeah, especially once I saw some of the teams on it. Like I saw Tom King and Doc Shaner were doing a Green Lantern. I was like, oh yeah, duh. So
right.
There was incentive.
I also read 52, which was on the DC reading order list.
52.
Issue 52.
Yeah.
But it's not relevant almost at all.
No.
It's relevant, but it's like it doesn't matter.
Hey, Archer 2010 FX kicking us off with a $15 super chat. Thank you so much, Archer. Archer says, really enjoy the channel and love this book. Thank you so much for enjoying us. We enjoy you. And you're going to find out right now whether or not we loved this book. I know that from a discussion we had earlier, I'm the only one who had fully read this before today, or before this book club, which really surprises me.
Were you reading it as it came out?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had dropped off of Geoff Johns' Justice League run pretty quickly, and I can't really give you a reason why. Like I remember liking Throne of Atlantis and stuff like that, but yeah, I wasn't reading this at the time.
So I was reading through some of this and I found it quite a bit of it pretty familiar. So I must have read bits and pieces of it. But I don't think I ever read the full thing.
Similarly, this felt like a book that I had dropped at some point. I had kept up only to a certain extent, and then I feel like I got preoccupied with other series that I think I liked a bit more.
I'm going to read this comment. Normally, we save the comments for a little later. And by the way, just in case you're unfamiliar with the book club format, we're really going to focus on talking about the book and, bringing you guys through a little bit of the history of it and stuff like that. And then on the back end, we'll really dive into talking with you all and getting into your comments and your thoughts and everything else. But I do want to read this comment from Reaper XC, because Reaper XC is somebody that is very locked into respond or commenting on our videos, but I don't think I've ever seen in the live chat before. Reaper says, Fabok and Reese are the definitive superhero artists for me. Their styles are perfect for the genre. I can't wait for some of their work to be collected at Ghost Machine. Tyler is my spirit animal.
Go!
Oh, that's so unfortunate, but thank you.
I think I think the four of us represent a real interesting cross section of like character dynamic. We're Ninja Turtles. We've been over this.
That is true. And Tyler, it's worth pointing out that Reaper XC is your biggest fan.
I have seen Reaper's comments on the YouTube. I peruse
Wow.
those usually to see when Sean's counteracting trolls. It's always fun.
Snapping
but,
back.
But seeing Reaper in there, I was like, all right, that's my dude right there.
Well, Reaper's one of the good ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Oh,
Okay, so we talk. Jason Fabok came up. Jason Fabok is one of the artists behind this this epic event. So it's largely Geoff Johns with Jason Fabok. Francis Manipul does make a sort of cameo in issue 45 and 46. Brian Bucalato colors Francis in those issues, but largely it's the team of Johns, Fabok, Brad Anderson, and Rob Lee. So basically, Ghost Machine in DC, proto Ghost Machine.
that ran so deep through as I was reading all this. I was like, wow, oh, this is where he found the team. Got it. Okay. And I think something about this team, Fabok, Reese, even Manipul to an extent, I think was what I identify as the New 52 era. Like if there was a house style, it'd be these guys. It'd be Finch a little bit. Capullo, there's the scratchiness, these lines when it comes to the shading and inks. So I've not realized that so much of what I had tied my own experience in the 52 is to these artists.
This is really the artists you just talked about are the vibe of the New 52 in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And coming out of that Jim Lee look as well from the first Justice League book.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel derivative to that. Like they come into their own, but the style and influence, I think, Lee lays the foundation. These guys continue to push that.
Another first-time commenter from Felicia Amanat Zakaria. I hope I got that right. Just discovered you guys. Great channel. First-time live watcher. Thank you for tuning in. Hope we don't disappoint. Okay, so I want to give a little bit of historical context for how we arrive at the DARKSEID War, because prior to this, there are 40 issues of Justice League history. That Justice League history starts basically with when the New 52 starts. The last week of August 2011, we got the release of Justice League #1 by Geoff Johns and Jim Lee. That first arc is where we see the Justice League formation and we see them encounter Darkseid for the first time. And he, gets away or whatever. It's an unresolved conflict between the League and Darkseid, and it's one of those things that you sort of know in the back of your mind as the reader that they'll have to get back to it at some point. And in between, that and this, a lot of things happen. Some of it is spoilery, and I don't know how to avoid discussing this without spoiling it. So if you don't know what happened throughout the New 52, I'm sort of sorry, but it is what it is. Um, Prior to this, we have the Trinity War, which I remember not really liking that much at the time when it was coming out. It was a little bit of an odd duck for me, but I go ahead, Tyler.
Was that? I'm just trying to refresh my memory. Was that the JLD versus JLA versus Justice League?
I don't think it might have been. I don't really
And-
fully remember. The
Okay.
the
Yeah,
thing
that
I
was
remember
yeah.
the most about Trinity War is really the end, because it's the only part that I genuinely remember loving, which is when you see that there's this Alfred guy who's not really Alfred. It's I believe it's Owlman's Alfred, and then everything goes to shit for the Justice League because now the crime syndicate has entered the fray.
Yeah, wasn't the end of that wasn't the end of that that the new 52 Atom was revealed to be the crime syndicate's Atom,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and she
Yes.
like exploded and killed somebody, like it was like Firestorm or somebody.
That sound. Yep. Yep. Damn, I was
Yeah.
reading it. I remember that. So I was reading up to this point, and I remember I was reading the Sin pieces because Phantom Stranger was a big piece of it, and that ultimately led to like Pandora's reveal and her box and all that kind of stuff.
The Trinity of Sin, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then that goes right into Forever Evil, where now the crime syndicate has essentially taken over the earth,
Yes.
and the heroes have to, rally back, fight back. That's where we get Mazis. Lex Luthor kind of emerges as sort of, in a weird way, the hero of Forever Evil. And lingering in that is the idea that the crime syndicate is running from something, and they have decided that they will claim this earth because the earth that they came from is conquered by something else, some kind of being that we don't necessarily know who it is. And ultimately, that is what leads into this. Lex Luthor joins the League. That is bad. There's a lot of problems between him and Batman, for example. Him and Wonder Woman have some really interesting interactions. The whole of Justice League, to me, especially in the lead into this event, is very good, and I recommend it. Jason Fabok joined the team on issue 36, I want to say, and he became the series artist at that point, and then of course would draw it until the end. And so all of that is kind of what leads into DARKSEID. And I guess where I want to start is the concept of this book. Because I don't know that there's like, I don't know that everybody really loves this story or really saw it quite how I did. And so I guess I just want to explain what I mean by that. So a lot of people say that the Justice League are gods among men. They're archetypical figures, right? And a lot of times when you look at like Greek gods or, Norse gods or whatever, a lot of times they are very they're not good people. They're not good gods. And I've always thought that that was very interesting because when you think about the concept of God, right? Whatever religion you're talking about, you're generally talking about a figure that is benevolent, that's good, that helps, that does good deeds, that you would worship and look up to. And that's not how it is in DC. Just like that's not how it is in Greek mythology in a lot of cases and stuff like that. In DC, DARKSEID is a god. DARKSEID is considered a new god, and DARKSEID is a monster, right? Even Mr. Miracle's father, help me
Hi,
please.
Father.
Hi, Father. I don't know. I haven't read a lot of Fourth World stuff, but I know from what Tom King did with the Mr. Miracle series that High Father isn't all that great either. And so what happens if you take the actual paragons of good who are seen as gods on earth, the Justice League, and you give them godly power for real? You really empower them. What do they become? what happens to our paragons of good? And I think this series explores that question in a very interesting way. Batman is a regular guy. What happens when a regular guy, even as perfect a man as Batman is, sits in the Mobius chair? What does that look like?
It looks like a guy who's going to have back sores. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, it. That's an interesting way to frame it because of how in the last battle, there's kind of like the way that Wonder Woman reflects on what has happened and how she brings everybody back down. So I think from a concept standpoint and it being about these humanized beings being elevated to that status, um, I think it's an interesting commentary on who they are as people, who they are as individuals with power, because you also have the counter of Lex Luthor, right? And what happens when you give him more power? Plus, he has his inflated ego. How do you balance those things? So I think the idea of playing with that, and I felt that throughout this run was, oh, they have never been gods, yet here they are now. What does that do? And they have their godly problems. They fight amongst themselves. They bicker with other peoples of power, and uh the difference is that they intervene, and that was one of the big things that Wonder Woman says.
Yeah. I guess to go back to the beginning, if you will, the prologue pieces here. Johns and Fabok are doing a lot of work to kind of establish what we can expect from this book. They've got the birth of Grail, who is introduced, I think, for the first time here. I love Grail. Grail to me is I really like that character. Obviously, visually, Jason Fabok slayed, but even her purpose, her goals, her anger, her hatred, she is like the anti-Amazon in some ways.
I really
When
liked
you
it.
think about Amazons, you don't think about this by any means.
I liked her a lot as a foil to Wonder Woman throughout this too, even with the conflicting or jumping between their narration throughout issues.
Yes. Yeah. And we also get introduced to the Anti-Monitor proper here, who is portrayed very different. Like, for me, when I first read this in 2015, that was the first time that I had ever seen the Anti-Monitor in a comic, because I hadn't yet read Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I didn't know anything. Now that I do, I'm like, wait a second here, though.
Yeah.
Wait, what is
Yeah.
this?
You knew him by his government name first?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's so reading this, I don't know, I guess pseudo for the first time and having all of my history behind me, and now being like a super critical reader and having read Crisis recently, this felt like a mini Crisis.
I was going
Yeah.
to bring that up too.
Yeah.
This to me, this felt like DC going, okay, Geoff, we need to do something to like crack off an era and start some new stuff. Give us a Crisis, but don't call it Crisis. But if you can like harken back to the hits, you'll get the Anti-Monitor. We'll give you DARKSEID, sure, you can have DARKSEID, and then just like Parademons, the Invisible Guys, briefly touch on the multiverse. I think you can do whatever else you want.
This story outside of the New 52, if it ever happened, like if it happened outside the 52, it would have been a Crisis. It is like Crisis level on pretty much every sense of it. Like even the fact that special, the first issue, quote unquote, if you're reading the Essential Edition, it's the first issue. It shows the multiverse. It shows all of the crises with like different artists too.
Yeah.
Even shows Flashpoint as like not a crisis, but a crisis level thing that reshaped the universe. And correct me if I'm wrong, that was the first time it was really talked about like that in New 52. That directly?
Maybe that directly, but then I have to think you also had Pandora
Sure.
earlier on, and I think there were drips and drops up to this point, but this was the first time, as I recall, and
Yeah.
if you're listening to the main show, I am not the person to ask about this. I do recall there being bits and pieces.
Well, even like multiversity was the thing that was going on, so I feel like that was discussed
Fair.
quite a bit there.
Fair.
Yeah, you're right. That would have been not too long before this, actually.
Halfway
Yeah.
through, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to that, like the way that the end sets up rebirth and that whole mystery, I mean, that ends up being itself almost a crisis level thing. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way.
I think the early issues of this do a fantastic job of establishing the heroes kind of almost like not doing the super heroic, like godly, what you would expect thing. I mean, there's an early series of pages here where they're just kind of like doing a very run of the mill investigation, and crime scene investigation. Batman and Flash. I thought that was fantastic, and I think it's like it's antithetical to the tone of the rest of the series, but I think it's important to see the League this way. It's important to see them as grounded as they could possibly be because of the heights that they're going to get to later on in the book.
And especially this early on in what is their career.
Right.
And man, I'm a sucker for when Batman and Flash team up to do detective stuff.
Well, they even comment on it like this isn't the typical stuff we do. This is a little too on the floor, right? We handle the big things, but this feels like it's laddering up to something larger.
What was the reasoning? It was a Cyborg gets migraines if a boom tube opens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Cyborg.
And of course, notably, Batman and Flash would have to do similar things in the Button, which was like the next year, 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. We quickly get introduced to Mr. Miracle, who is a pretty big factor in this book, but I don't really remember having a whole lot to do with anything prior to this. And I've really, really liked him here. More now than I remember liking him back then, because I have so much more context for who Mr. Miracle is now than I did. Uh, just mostly due to the Mr. Miracle series by Tom King. Um, man, his encounter with Darkseid, like it for me, you can feel the fear and how imposing Darkseid is. And Jason Fabok's art just does a tremendous job of selling it. Like just those eyes, how the red eyes and how like it's just kind of coming off of him. There's raw energy that we know what that energy does. That energy sent Batman to the past. You don't want to get hit by that.
And like prior to this, the New Gods were pretty much on ice, not used often, from what I remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And Geoff Johns has talked about how this was his first time really playing with the New Gods, because if you think about it, he hadn't done much with that playground even before the New 52. He had never done a Justice League series. I don't know that he touched on Darkseid. If he had, I can't recall. So this was really the first time that he got to deal with some of those concepts and characters.
Yeah, because
I don't even think while I was reading heavily, in the 2000s and 2010s, I don't think there was very little New God stuff.
Yeah.
You'd see Mr. Miracle and Barda every now and then, but
Well, that whole extended sequence with Mr. Miracle, it really reads as like a solidification of who he is in the New 52, almost like an origin. It's
Yeah.
essentially his origin.
Yeah.
So it
Yep.
felt like an introduction to the character, like proper, I thought that sequence was awesome. I mean, it's Fabok. Like I feel like that's going to be a lot of my a lot of my talking about the art in this. It's like, oh, it's Fabok, you know. But yeah, like that shot where the omega beams hits him in the thighs. Well, maybe first of all, think, what are the logistics of omega beams? Do they send you to the past? Do they vaporize you? Are they just
do they
bullets?
just go straight
Yeah.
through?
Yeah.
Does he have certain settings that DARKSEID sets it to?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Click, 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 click.
Yeah,
Set phaser to stun.
that's
Yeah.
right.
But I think that was necessary grounding because for somebody who's not familiar with that world, Metron and then the consequences of the chair play such a big role. So for me, I appreciated all of that because I'm like, Metron, wait, I've seen this guy. Hold on a second. He's the dude in the chair. Like, what's up? What's his bag? Oh, look at all this history. Look at all this story. Cool. Okay. Grounded. Now, what is the consequence of Batman taking over the chair? And that happens quick.
And, Marco, to what you're saying, for a lot of people who are reading at this time, this was the first time that we were seeing a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
So think about the legwork that Johns and Fabok had to do so early on. Like this is an event of 18 issues overall, and they had to introduce you, assuming it was your first time, to Mr. Miracle, Barda, Grail's a new character, Anti-Monitor, who has a huge part to play in this. I think there was so much heavy lifting that had to be done early, and yet the first chapter, and by chapter, this is broken up into 3 chapters: chapter 1, 2, and 3, which is like X amount of issues each. The first chapter does a great job of doing the heavy lifting, but also feeling epic and big and cinematic and exciting. This is event level storytelling to me.
I think it also has to, like, you're right, Sean, it does that, but it also does a lot of heavy lifting for concepts, like DC concepts. Like, there's a lot of talk about anti-life equation in this. You have to understand who the Amazons and their whole shtick is. Gods, and there's prophecies, and there's children, and then the Anti-Monitor with the idea of crises and negative energy and all that stuff being antithetical to DARKSEID. There was a lot of, like, it's not wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff, but like DC stuff that needed to be kind of explained, and I thought it did it pretty succinctly. Honestly, it gets a little much in the beginning, but it gets it out of the way, and it's like, all right, we've established ground.
Well, and I think one thing with this is that through these 18 or whatever issues, they start each issue with Wonder Woman as the POV. She's got the the captions, and we're sort of seeing the event through her eyes, but she's giving the narration. And in the beginning of each issue, she sort of sums up what's been happening. And while most of the time I found that I do find that pretty annoying, but here I found it actually, like, while there were bits and pieces that were repetitive, I also found that the twists that came in each issue were helpful, and they were just different enough to add a new piece of information that would make me go, oh yeah, this feels good to read.
Well, go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, just to that start, would you have felt different if that was another character? Because I was surprised by how much of this was led by Wonder Woman and her narration, and I felt like had this been Batman, that would have felt different. Had that been Superman, that would have felt different. And so something about the fact that tied to the Amazon, sure, but I didn't expect it to be what felt like such a Wonder Woman led event.
I think that's interesting because I wonder I wonder if Geoff needed something for Wonder Woman to do.
That's kind of where I land on this too, Cale. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a different take on that. I think that Wonder Woman is chosen because of thematics. She is a god. In the New 52, she is a god. She is the only one of the members of the Justice League who has actual godly origins as the daughter of Zeus. So making her the POV person, she's also she's not, I guess she's technically not the only member of the league who gets a power upgrade. She's not the only one, but I think she might be the only one who's not corrupted on some level.
He doesn't get a power up.
That's what I'm saying. She's not.
Yeah,
she's the
nothing
only one who
happens to her.
doesn't get,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay.
and she doesn't get corrupted either.
Right.
Because even
yeah, you're
Jessica
right.
Cruz gets corrupted by Volthoom.
Yeah, you're right.
So she's the pure one. She's
Yeah.
not motivated by more power.
Mm-hmm.
Batman can't get himself off that damn chair. And obviously a part of that is the sway of the chair itself, but he's a human being. How's he supposed to beat that?
Yep.
He can do it. He's just not ready.
Right.
He can get off anytime he wants.
Yeah, whatever.
Alfred said, "Go ahead then."
Yeah.
That was great.
Calling his shit.
I diapered your bottom, sir. You better well get off that chair.
Ain't no way Batman getting off the goon chair.
And I think also, Wonder Woman understands what is at stake here. And on top of that, this whole conflict is initiated by an Amazon. This is a years and years and years old revenge plot by Marina, who has her daughter Grail, specifically so that she can kill Darkseid.
Marina was friggin' rad.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Just an older Amazon with a griffin.
She came through with that griffin. I was like,
dude,
okay, Marina.
Yeah,
Yeah, she was cool as shit.
It's like I've played a hunter that looked like that in Warcraft. Like that's the kind of thing it was going for.
Yeah. And it's like the whole, like, think about who's involved in this, right? You got Darkseid, you got Anti-Monitor, you got all these big picture heavy hitters, and all of this started for revenge. Grail, for me at least, I had a lot of sympathy for her on some level because even though she's a maniac, she didn't ask for this. She didn't ask to be birthed. She didn't ask to be raised and taught to want violence and war. This is her mother's fault. Sins of the, we always say sins of the father. In this case, it's sins of the mother. She unleashed hell on earth because she's angry.
And violence begets violence, right?
Right.
So it escalates.
And what does that escalation look like? So in the third issue, the second issue, Superman and Lex Luthor are transported to Apokolips. First of all, this place, I know it's on another planet, but damn, if you can't tell me this looks like New York when that orange fucking hue was in the sky like 2 years ago or whatever that was.
You mean the Diablo 4 marketing campaign?
Yeah, look at this. Like, this shit looks like
that.
I've seen that. I have pictures of that in my phone.
You're not wrong.
But Superman ends up getting he's losing his power. There's no sun here or whatever, and he's essentially dying. And one of the things that happens is he ends up kind of like bathing in the waters of Lake Apokolips. And go ahead.
Is fire the same as solar energy?
For these purposes.
Yeah, I guess I gotta. I'm a Marvel head. I gotta stop trying to justify DC stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but shit, he came out that water, that fire, whatever it is, and my man had the chrome, the black and the black and silver with the black eye beams. That's, to me, this version of Superman is scarier than all iterations I've seen of Superman before. Red Sun, Injustice, all of that.
Yeah.
He's essentially like a nega Superman.
Mhm. Got that
And
Mr. Negative energy.
yeah, and like the fact that like the way he looks, I'm not the biggest fan of his look. I'm just gonna go out and say that. But that look could almost only be done properly with like the new digital inks and all that stuff, and the way digital art has kind of shifted. So, like during New 52, I'm sure this is awesome looking. I actually prefer the concept art for it. I don't know if you saw the concept art version of it.
Was it in the back?
It was in the back matter, yeah. He had more of a suit, but he was still negative, but his suit was over it. It almost looked like New 52 Superboy.
Oh, I see.
But I see why they went for something else. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Actually, it kind of looks like Sunspot there. But yeah, dude, it is scary. It was kind of freaky to see him do that, because you're like, all right, he's a negative image. Is he a negative Superman? What does that mean?
And it's the first inkling that we get that we're going to be dealing with a version of the Justice League that we haven't seen before. And the Earth is in peril right now because Superman's gone dark. He's Breaking Bad on Apocalypse. And meanwhile, Darkseid and Anti-Monitor are waging war in the streets of America, the streets of Earth. Like, this sucks.
I think it was non-binary bomb in the chat that said it's a crisis on one particular street or something or other. But yeah.
Yeah, they don't really get around too much. Yeah, seeing like this almost feels like I don't want to say it's a commentary on the New 52 because I don't know that for a fact. But if you'll take a little bit of a quick walk with me, Geoff Johns wants to show you the heroes the way he thinks about them. The way he thinks about DC's characters is they're paragons of good, they're virtuous, they're good guys. And there's really no gray area there in his mind. The New 52 was not Jeff's idea. It was Dan Didio's idea. And Dan Didio loves the sort of edgier, darker portrayals of these characters. So if you look at where a lot of them started at the beginning of the New 52, look at Superman in Action Comics. Constantly has red eyes. He's throwing human beings around like nothing, paperweights. He doesn't value humanity and his position in it the same way that you think of Superman valuing. So it's almost to me like Geoff said, okay, Dan, I'm going to give you these characters the way you say you want them. I'm going to make them the darker versions of themselves. I'm going to jack that up to 11 and let's see what happens.
And I'd argue he was doing that too, even through like I always want to say Fear Itself.
Forever Evil?
Forever Evil, yeah. Yeah, it was progressively getting that way too. And this is just a culmination of it.
Well, even in Forever Evil, we get, and they're here too, but we get the Justice League analogs in the crime syndicate. What bigger statement could there be on Geoff Johns' perspective on all this than the use of the crime syndicate, especially in that way, and then going full Monty and saying, okay, you know what? We're just going to turn the Justice League dark. They don't necessarily ever get to cross the line per se, but they definitely get as close as they can.
I think the bigger statement you're looking for there comes right after when Dr. Manhattan shows up and we get the explanation in Rebirth.
Right. He takes it even further. I don't know about you guys, but when Batman sat in that chair now and 10 years ago, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, Go ahead.
I had too much knowledge of what happened. I was like, oh no, this is the three Jokers thing, right?
Yeah. I 10 years ago I went, okay, that's interesting. And then I heard the three Jokers thing and I went, well, and then this time I read the Batman tie-in and I went, oh, actually, if you give the smartest dude in the room all knowledge, he's the most annoying guy in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
No,
chair that makes you into a dick, like how he acted with Hal. He's like, oh yeah, you're just a ring. I was like, oh, that dude's an asshole.
I didn't like that. I felt like it didn't speak to his values. Like it felt like the point was the powers won't corrupt the individual because they're good, but he ends up being maybe not fully corrupted, but he does end up being persuaded to such a degree that it removes some of his character and some of his humanity.
I don't think the point was that they are incorruptible. I think the point was that they are very much corruptible. And
they,
if you go ahead.
and they overcome it.
Right. And if you go back to Justice League #1, the first two characters who interact are Batman and Green Lantern, and it doesn't go great. They have a contentious relationship all throughout Justice League. So Batman talking to Green Lantern that way isn't weird. It's
Right.
actually completely in line with their relationship, just again jacked up to 11. Now Batman has no filter because he doesn't care anymore. His humanity has been taken from him in place of godly power.
Knowledge.
Right. And we see it with Superman too. He's like, wait, Lex, I don't need to fight you. I could kill you. You're nothing to me.
Word. But when he tells him, "Yo, I've been holding back all these years, idiot." Like, all right. Hey, don't hurt the guy's feelings. Damn.
I
And
know
you're
it.
bald too.
Yeah.
I know it's a well trodden, dynamic Lex and Superman, but man, written well doesn't get old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially like having the context of Forever Evil here, where like Lex did some stuff, and then the context afterwards too, because spoiler, when he puts on the Superman suit, like I remembered that, and I was like, oh, Lex can be a hero, and knowing that dynamic while they had that discussion on Apocalypse, I thought that was phenomenal.
This is also coming off the heels of Lex releasing the Amazovirus. Well, the Amazovirus getting out and them learning that Lex was actually the one who created it in the first place. So the relationship between them is, I mean, it's Superman and Lex, so duh, it's fractured. But like it's even worse right now. And for me, I don't know. Like I'm very curious to hear what you guys thought about this, but for me, I had a perverse pleasure in a way of watching these characters go bad. Like seeing Superman speak unfiltered, seeing Batman be sort of dismissive and uncaring. Like we don't see that at all. I also felt like Geoff Johns had a point to make through that. So I enjoyed it largely.
I think on the whole, I enjoyed it. I love when a superhero gets like some kind of power boost and their costume changes. Like I'm just like a sucker for that, to actually reference Fear itself when those people got that power. Sean's cracking up at
Yo,
No.
Dan Trudeau in the chat. Oh my God. He said, Batman sits on the chair. Did Tony Soprano die in the last episode? I think that's what I would ask the Mobius chair if I sat in that motherfucker too, even though I'm pretty sure I know the answer. Sorry, Tyler. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so I think on the whole, I enjoyed it. I think there are some of the characters, because like not all of them break bad. It's more like a just emphasizing certain aspects of them and cranking that up to 11. Like Hal and Shazam, Captain Marvel. They don't really go bad, but they get cranked up in different ways. That sounded weird. But I think I enjoyed it as a whole. I think the whole thing with like, it felt like I like the dynamic between making these not God characters. You know, Wonder Woman says it, you know, pretty early on in the book. She never viewed them as gods. And then making them actual gods is a really interesting concept. And having Wonder Woman be the POV to experience that is also interesting. But I also thought that kind of left Wonder Woman in the dust for really doing anything. She was more reactionary because everyone else got powers or they got corrupted somehow.
Yeah, and I think that sort of added to the narration. Like it gave meat to that, and it gave sort of the appropriate, you know, like Sean was saying, like the appropriate thematics in the narration. You know, we got the story of Ionos, I think, about the, you know, the woman who is thrown into the sea by
By
Zeus.
Zeus, right?
And you know, a lot of things are wildly relevant and understandable for whatever reason when you put them within Greek mythology. And getting that from Wonder Woman in a very succinct way to explain what's going on in the broader text uh worked really well. As for the rest of them, I found the Superman one, I found him just to be like, what is it, Superman 3? When
The
when he
Richard Pryor
turns
one, yeah.
bad, that had to be a reference. That whole issue had to be one big Superman
Yeah.
3 reference.
I think you're right. Yeah, him just being
'Cause
mad at a diner.
yeah, he's sitting he's sitting at a diner just pouring himself a drink, and he's just an asshole.
That's that GIF people use, right? Of Superman
Yeah,
drinking.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I found the Green Lantern one especially interesting because it showed why Hal is sort of the best one. Uh, because because of the fact that he is willpower, and if he doesn't want to be corrupted, he won't be. Mm-hmm.
And also to that, he's the one that helps Bruce later
Yeah.
undo that.
Takes off the ring, says you have it in you.
And
Go ahead.
and to that end, like even by showing Bruce that he has that willpower, like you don't become Batman from when you're, you know, 8 years old without having an incredible degree of willpower, right? Like,
Yeah. We got to talk about Flash, the Black Racer. I, I I forgot that happened. So when that happens here, where it's like, oh, Darkseid has this, you know, this crazy assassin or whatever, and it needs a host, so it goes to the Flash. I was like, well, damn, can this get any worse?
And I feel like the Black Racer and the Flash have had history too.
they
And
have,
I actually,
yeah,
yeah, and I like that the tie-in issue, like the Flash one, because it talks about how death really is the impetus of the Flash, and it's always around the Flash, whether he wants it to be or not, and he can't outrun it. And I thought that was a real interesting way.
well, I mean, okay, all right, I'll be that guy. So Wally
Dude, we gotta.
actually out races the Black Racer and outruns death. So like in a way, you're right, because this is Barry, and he, you know, he died in Infinite Crisis, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and you know his death reverberated through the multiverse and, like, you know, did so many things. You're right that he is inextricably tied to the Black Racer and death. Wally beat him though, and I don't know. Wally's just better.
Well, yeah,
So,
this is just further proof that Wally's the best Flash.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, the way that the Black Racer like comes out of his mouth, the Flash's mouth or whatever.
I was
What
kind
the
of
fuck?
I was kind of hoping it would be a little more graphic, like the Hulk series right now.
Pretty,
PKJ's
that was
Hulk.
pretty crazy.
Burst. It was crazy though. Yeah.
What issue was that, Sean? Are you looking at it?
I'm actually trying to find the exact panel,
Okay.
but
I thought it was somebody else that came out of his mouth.
Was
yeah,
it?
I thought
Wild,
so too.
wild sentence. But so for me, this new 52 Black Racer, and this is going to be a dumb thing to say, took a lot of heat out of. So for me, the Black Racer is like Doomsday for Superman, right? And so this took a lot of heat out of the Black Racer for me. I was just like, this is, I don't know, it's a little boring.
Is it because it's like you don't bring out the Black Racer unless like it is end times for the Flash?
And maybe it was that I had previously I had no context for him being, a dark side assassin or whatever, right?
Sure.
But it felt like he was a minion.
Like a weapon. Yeah. I mean, they even
Yeah.
describe him as Darkseid's weapon in this.
Yeah.
You know, it felt like Darkseid was getting his ass beat for a bit, so he's like he took out a gun in a knife fight.
Yep.
I really like that because I have no context for the Black Racer. I don't remember when I've seen him outside of this. Some Flash or another, I guess, maybe.
Very random something, yeah.
But the fact that he's just a hired gun and he just comes through and it's just like, oh man, this is really bad. And then the Flash has to figure out like, how do I deal with this? I don't want this. I don't want this power. I don't want anything to do with this. How do I stop this? And I thought the way they ended up sort of dealing with that was pretty interesting because he's got to like take a life in order to go away or whatever. And they found a clever way to do that, which I want to just touch on later on. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting, but I don't have the larger context for the character.
It was cool, I guess.
It's fine.
Yeah, I guess I expected a little more. I did like the way it resolved, but the introduction and the premise of him, okay. It didn't wow me.
Marco said,
Bro.
yeah, he's death, big deal.
Does that wow you?
The art was cool. The character itself, like, all right.
That's just a Todd
Hey.
McFarlane action figure.
Art is 50% of this whole deal. And I feel like, this is the shit I want to see. Like, I don't need it to even make all the sense in the world. That shit looks cool. My man is that design, that costume design is sick.
I love that it has almost like an Olympic skier look to it versus like Swiss mountain chalet skier like the old Kirby Black Racer.
It does. It don't like it has a little bit of what's the other Olympic sport? Luging too. Like
Yeah.
that kind of
Oh,
gear
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speed skating.
Did you guys feel like Darkseid kind of went out like a chump? Did you guys have a problem with the way he was portrayed or the way he died?
I don't have a problem with Darkseid going out like a chump if it's the Anti-Monitor that did it. Like I think if there's anyone who can do it, it's the Anti-Monitor. Because the Anti-Monitor, he was like killing full-on universes. Like he did it to the Crime Syndicate's universe. So like, it didn't really bother me. In fact, I kind of enjoyed it because like I'm reading this book, and Darkseid just gets mollywopped, and then I'm like looking at my book. I left it in my car, and I'm halfway through this book. I'm like, oh, Darkseid's already dead, and I'm not even close to done with this book. So where do we go from here? I thought that was really interesting. Because it almost felt like all this build up to Darkseid. We're getting Darkseid. This is like the culmination of since issue 1 of Justice League. We're hitting almost issue 50. and then he's gone right away. And I thought that led to some compelling storytelling, at least kind of to push me through the further issues.
Yeah, I think it helped to elevate and make serious Grail, make serious Anti-Monitor, and I think that that duo and their ultimate goal was, it made more sense if he was off the board, and it felt like it was part of Grail's plan. So maybe not an issue with him dying, and at most, maybe the fact that Grail was ultimately trying to manipulate him. That might be the part that I might have issue with. But I thought it worked for me.
I think the problem that I had is that I feel like New 52 Darkseid requires you to have knowledge of old Darkseid in order to understand why he's a threat. Because he
Mhm.
doesn't actually do anything that shows you instead of telling you that he's dangerous. Like, if you know who Darkseid is, then yeah, sure, this dude's a beast. But the first time we see him, he gets chumped out by the League and he leaves. And then the second time we see him is now, and he dies. And like, I was cool with the fact that he died, but it's again, it's like the context of Darkseid as a whole allows me to accept this because of the way this is handled. But I don't think if I had never like seen Darkseid before, if I had never, read Final Crisis, or if I had never seen him in any format, I would have been like, what's the big deal about him?
Yeah, and I think that you know that it's the anti-monitor that kills him is also just like, well, if you haven't read a 40-year-old comic book, if the New 52 Justice League is the first time you have seen Darkseid, and you've just started with DC, and this new guy, the anti-monitor, just shows up and walks all over Darkseid, who we've previously established is a massive threat. Meh. Like, but like for me, it's like Darkseid is always shown as this, you know, impossible, imposing, ultra powerful figure. And it shows to me that, with all my knowledge, it's like, yeah, to someone like the anti-monitor, he's almost nothing.
And they did throw a wrinkle in with the anti-monitor here, where he has the anti-life equation in him.
Right. Right.
The anti-monitor, yeah. Yeah.
Which sounds dumb, but it was also like oh yeah, why wouldn't he? He's the anti-monitor, like
I didn't know what the fuck that meant when I first read this. I had no idea, like, what does that mean? Like, okay, so what? But now that I know where he's from and have, read the original Crisis, it's like, oh yeah, duh.
the anti-life equation is the ultimate comic book MacGuffin. Nobody really knows what it is. It was an orb in this. It's been text before. It's
Yeah.
been just a feeling before. So like that's just one of those things I just wave away as like, yeah, that's DC stuff. That is the stuff that I read these comic books for. It doesn't make much sense, not really, but it's there to kind of get the plot going.
Hell yeah. And the way he got two-pieced by Anti-Monitor and the Black Racer was pretty cool. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like how the anti-monitor was essentially just like yoink, that's why you don't bring a gun to a knife fight. If the enemy gets the gun, you're kind of screwed too.
Anti-Monitor brought a bomb to a knife fight. Like, Jesus Christ, there's a
Grenade.
hole in Darkseid. So that takes us into the sort of not quite I guess the halfway point. The two issues that are drawn by Francis Manapul. And for me, I think this is where I was like, I didn't like I'm a big fan of Manapul. I think he's fantastic, but I didn't love his art here compared to what we had been getting.
I'm kind of with you, Sean, actually. It felt flatter and less painterly. it wasn't the watercolor that I was used to from seeing his stuff. You know, specifically like his Flash stuff. Not to say it was bad. It's great, but it wasn't like once I knew there was Manipul issues, and you know, look, I have one of the covers up right now, like a Manipul cover. You can tell it's Manipul. I got to those issues. I'm like, something just seems like not rushed, but it just seems smaller in a way.
I guess I've got to be the one to make a controversial statement here. I'm not crazy about Fabok.
Oh,
Whoa. Whoa, buddy.
in general,
Yeah.
even in Rook.
I mean, Rook, you know what? Yeah. Yeah. It's not that I don't recognize the talent. I think it's just not to my taste. I think it's very, very similar to the people it's very, very similar to. And that's not, you know, to your Finch, to your to a degree, your Capullo. But they just come from a same sort of school that just doesn't always appeal to me. And I think Fabok to me just doesn't, he's sort of the worst offender in that for me.
Is it because it could sometimes be over rendered with Fabok? Like everyone's got to have all these different parts of a costume, and it was kind of a like it showcased what was wrong with some of the new 52 designs.
No, I think it's just, I think it just doesn't appeal to me.
It ain't wet in your
Uh,
whistle.
But I loved the Manipul stuff. The Manipul colors and I'm a big Manipul fan anyway from the Flash stuff. So basically anytime I see him in a book, I'm into it. So I was pumped to get that art switch.
Probably in the middle. I liked Manipul fine. What I didn't like was the removal of some of the harder lined edges, the straight lines, some of the scratchy inks. Like that felt very much like the style that was trying to be expressed, and then to switch over to uh more curves, more lines, a bit more rounded of body figures, I think was a bit hard to initially get my head around, but I did like the colors and the flats. There were moments where it looked like digital watercolor, which sometimes worked. There were moments in, I'm trying to find it right here, but towards the end where of issue, what is this? This is of 45, where you get more watercolor looking things. It feels like it doesn't mesh well with the style of the book, but otherwise, it worked for me in moments, and other moments it didn't. I prefer the more house style art of it.
For me, I think more than anything, the book lost like scope when Manipul jumped on. It just didn't feel as big and epic. Um, I don't know. I don't know.
I wonder if that's sort
Hmm.
of that pause in the fighting, you know, because in those couple of issues, like that's when we make that jump from DARKSEID immediately dying to the tie-ins to uh, the next step, you know.
There was a moment that I wanted to highlight from chapter 6, which and this is one of the things that I think Geoff is so good at, is bringing the humanity, bringing the human element to the story. You know, in the midst of all this fighting, God's dying, God's doing godly shit. Mr. Miracle and Big Barda see each other and they embrace and they kiss. And then immediately we flash over to Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, who are like, da 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 da.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely. I
Ooh,
caught that too.
Yeah,
a
that
little,
was-
little awkward.
Especially this is when her and Superman had been together, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and they there were moments where it's like, oh, do you love him? What is he to you? There was like soap opera stuff that felt a little out of place. It's like, like Trevor, we're
Yeah.
Darkseid's right in front of us. Like, who you gonna shoot? Hey, she's like, what are we?
I'm covered in dark side blood. Can we have this conversation later?
Yeah. it but I loved Barda and Mr. Miracle. I love that dynamic and that relationship. It felt so realistic, and I think that was a good moment to be able to highlight that. But and maybe the reason that he was including it was to help highlight that, and at the end when they kind of separate. But in the moment, it took me out of the book because it just felt a little cheesy.
Yeah, I can see that too. I think for me, because it's an ongoing conversation or plot point that's been brought up in Justice League throughout, it hits a little different. Like the New 52 removed so many relationships from DC's canon, and this being one of them. Not that they had never been together, but just that like now they're not and they haven't been. I don't know if there was a time. I don't remember if there was a time during the New 52 where they were together. I think there was only flashbacks to the fact that they had been.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure you're right, Sean. It was always like they were exes the entire time. They were exes
Yeah.
turned coworkers turned friends.
Yeah.
Right. And her sort of being with Superman, I just think there's an interesting commentary there. Not that they necessarily nail it here, but there's an interesting commentary to me about the idea that Wonder Woman feels more connected to Superman, someone who shares her level of power that Steve Trevor doesn't. And I think like they try to touch on that, but because the story isn't about that, I don't think they go as far as they could have. Really, it becomes more of a reason for Superman to be very masculine and pissed off, like, yo, what are you doing with my girl?
Yeah.
And then he says, I'm gonna fight my girl. And that was crazy. But what does he care at the point, I guess?
There was a moment where right after Darkseid dies, and it's a nice 2-page spread of all the heroes kind of in an action pose, and it's Jessica, Wonder Woman, Mr. Miracle, Cyborg, Shazam, Darkseid's in the foreground, just like bloodied up and melting, and you got Steve, and he's like, pew, pew, this little gun, he's all posed. I'm like, bro, what are you doing here? What's going on? Go home. Hey, go put tea on. I'll be home in like 30 minutes. Relax.
I know it's the third rail, but I kind of wish Superman caught a body. I kind of do.
He does a whole bunch of parademons here. Like what is?
Yeah.
Where's Superman's line? Like
parademon. Come on. I mean,
they have feelings too.
That's why I don't want to see like
I know you get set off on that thought. Yeah.
No, because I want to go off about Man of Steel right now, but it's not. But it's like, anyway, I won't.
Yeah. So anyway, Flash was all sad about killing Darkseid and shit.
And they were like, "Oh, it wasn't you, Barry. It was the racer who just happened to use all of your body parts to do it." Yeah, it's not the gun that kills people.
And who would care? It's Darkseid.
That was my big thing.
Yeah, that's a thing. Like, oh, would you be that upset if you killed like Hitler? Like,
oh yeah, I gotta go home and cry about it. I just saved the world from the fucking god of evil.
And he killed Darkseid.
But you want to talk about where I come alive with this event? Everything before this has been very good, very nice. I love it. Where I come alive is when the crime syndicate gets involved, because that is my favorite thing in the whole of the New 52 is the crime syndicate. Whenever who is it? Mr. Miracle, I think it's Mr. Miracle that goes to visit Ultraman.
Yeah.
And he's this frail little piece of shit akin to the Superman from Flashpoint. He's like real skinny and everything else. I was like, yeah, let's go. And then when Volthoom takes over Jessica Cruz, and then when Grid takes over Cyborg again, my man Cyborg cannot catch a break. under Geoff Johns. Geoff Johns does not fuck with Cyborg because every time that Grid comes around, he takes over Cyborg's body. Just has no autonomy.
Gotta upgrade that McAfee, bro. What's going on?
Jesus, get some virus protection.
Yeah, I did like the inclusion. I like them coming back, especially like it was fun to see. It's always fun to see like those mirror versions of the characters, but then to see them play a role in certain things was cool.
Hell yeah.
I was kind of not into them being in this.
Oh,
Them being in this started to then turn into, I think there's too much going on here. And it felt like, all right, Geoff is done soon, and he needs to wrap up all his loose threads. We got to figure out what happens to that baby. How do we tie that in the most convoluted way possible? We got to close off like the Grid story. Like, it just felt like too much for me. And that's where I would say that's probably my biggest knock. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the characters. Owlman, underrated, I think. But I just think it was just a little too much in the story that was already going on, which then led to like the heroes being gods part having to be one shots. Like, Hal being a god, you don't even see it happen in the main story.
Yeah.
They do a quarter panel and a 4-panel page where it's like, oh, Hal Jordan, God of Light, and you never see anything about that. He talks about it in a panel or two later on. So I feel like there was almost like too much focus on some of the Crime Syndicate stuff later on. I mean, the good thing is it gives Cyborg and Jessica something to do, but other than that, I felt like it was almost a step too much.
I also think it, especially in the end, when at the end when is it Grail or is it Superwoman is just blasting people with baby rays. It sort of makes some of the action and some of the plot a bit hard to follow. On top of everything else that's going on. It's almost like is the baby Mazas? Yeah. He almost acts as like a Deus Ex Machina in that he shows up and it's the eraser ray.
Convoluted. That was when this book kind of did a little jumping of the shark. She's like, all right, we're fucking got a baby now, and they're gonna clean up this mess. And yeah, that's where it pulled me out of the book.
See, I love that stuff because to me, the Crime Syndicate's value is in the idea. My dog is licking me right now. The Crime Syndicate's my leg, Tyler.
Okay.
Jesus. The Crime Syndicate, they kind of exist to show you what happens when the League decides that they don't care anymore and that they're down with being bad. You know, this is the other side. This is how bad it can be. And if you read Forever Evil, then you always knew that Superwoman's baby was going to be important. You always knew that baby was going to have a lot of power. And so I appreciated seeing that getting followed up on. It also gave the League members a way to come back, a way to turn back the clock and go back to good. That's how, the Flash is able to go back because he, ends up killing Volthoom. You think he killed Jessica Cruz, but really he killed Volthoom.
Cool. Good twist.
I thought that was a good twist. Jessica gets to finally become her own hero because Volthoom is no longer in the picture. Go ahead, Tyler.
I never knew how Jessica Cruz became a Green Lantern. Like, this finally answered that question for me. Like, a question I didn't really have. I just assumed she was a Green Lantern, but I knew she was Power Ring at one point. So finally have an answer to that.
The idea that that Volthoom's that there's like a whole region inside that ring where there are all these, captured, would-be Green Lanterns or whatever souls that have been sucked in by the ring. It's like the inverse of the concept of the Lantern Corps. Like the Lantern empowers the people to go out and be Green Lanterns, and here the ring is using the people. Like it's a sick, twisted inversion that I really appreciated. Owlman is just a boss. Like you can't overuse concepts like that, but man, if I didn't pop when he came out on screen or on the page rather here, I don't know. I love them.
Those characters are cool. I like their inclusion and it makes sense. It's just the baby part. Like
Talk about it.
it's just the utilization of a child to absorb all these powers and like it just got too goofy and like maybe a little too
Using that baby like a World War II machine gunner.
Dude,
they do it in the
That was
boys.
great.
Like,
no,
that's
no,
from
absorb.
the boys. Yeah.
Now the panel that had me, the panel that had me was this one, where the fucking who does that? Because this shit is crazy. It's I don't even know. Oh, it's Steve Trevor. When Steve Trevor blasts Superwoman like
Oh,
he
yeah.
I don't even know how to describe what he did to her, but somehow the baby is A-okay.
She must have read The Walking Dead and knew what happened to Lori and had to hold the baby up a little higher.
That's a lucky baby. Oh man.
But Marco, I'm with you. The baby was a little too much because it also could just absorb all the god powers. Like that's how we get them away. It was just a Hoover.
A
That's
little,
for your people, Cal.
a little
Thank you.
hand wavy. I felt like, and I think that was the thing. The inclusion of the crime syndicate was neat up until it felt like, okay, we're wrapping this up. Here's how we do it. Just throw the baby at him. Point and shoot. Fill up that diaper.
I guess the baby could have done it because it was Alexander Luthor's kid. But man, there's so much prerequisite knowledge you needed to understand that baby.
But
Actually,
but it's an ongoing story. I mean, what are you supposed to do, right? Like this is after Forever Evil.
That-
Was Alexander Luthor in Forever Evil? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
that
And-
actually was where I felt like, oh, you know what? I'm glad I did the homework of us having have done Crisis, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, all right, you threw something at me that I now understand, can kind of contextualize it. Still a little shaky. Like, yes,
That dude didn't have sex.
And also, I'd like to point out that it's Mazis because they're not from this Earth; they're from another Earth, like
Sure.
a counter Earth, so it's backwards.
Saying backwards.
One other gripe I have. What was the point of Shazam's godlike, the god of gods?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
can't tell you.
Yeah.
His costume barely
I-
changes too.
I really enjoyed that tie-in. I think that might have been my favorite tie-in. But there was nothing for it.
His whole thing was, I'm just going to help civilians. Like
Yeah.
multiple times throughout it. But he's the god of gods. Do you think something with a title like that would have some form of power that is different?
Not even gonna light people on fire, which is one of his new powers.
Yeah.
Speaking of the baby, though, I also did want to say that I appreciated the symmetry of Grail being used as a weapon by her mother for war, and then Grail using this baby in the same way.
Yeah, it's good, poetic as it were.
Rhymes.
That's right.
So back to the baby. Is this the same baby from Metal?
The DARKSEID baby.
Yeah.
So
Yes, it definitely is.
Oh yeah,
Wild.
dude.
where else would a
That's true.
DARKSEID
Yeah.
baby?
You can't do that twice. That's a one-time.
He's gonna
thing.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure I didn't like that at all back then. Like I don't think
I don't think you did.
Yeah, because we were reviewing that shit at the time. I don't think
so.
I
Yeah.
I don't think I like the baby at all. Let's talk about the tie-ins a little bit. Tyler, I think, mentioned, or Cale mentioned his favorite was the Shazam one.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of all those? The most popular one is definitely the Green Lantern.
Yeah.
I thought they were cool. I thought they were like good little vignettes of how certain heroes can use and learn and abuse of their power, or in certain cases, um, reflect. Like I like Batman's. Like like the. Ooh, I saw Tyler go. I don't know about that one. I liked it just because I think when he finds Joe Chill, he has all the knowledge in the world, but that doesn't help him process. That doesn't matter ultimately, right? He didn't need to know, and he'd be in the same position. Now he just has a more focused anger or a more focused regret, and uh, if that's the case, then who cares, right? Because at that point you can unfocus and pull away, and you do more good out of that. And he doesn't realize it because he's in the chair, and so I like that as for the irony of who the character is in the context of being in Metron's chair.
I didn't care much for the tie-ins, if I'm being honest. I thought the Green Lantern one was good because it actually illuminated something that doesn't happen in the main story. The other ones feel like why are they even doing this? There's the anti-monitors around. Like, what are you doing? Why does Batman have time to go back to Gotham to look into this stuff?
Yeah,
So it
actually,
felt like, just from like a timeline standpoint, it felt like a unneeded speed bump.
Yeah. I think though, like that's sort of where I appreciated the art switch between Fabok and Manipal, in that it felt like that momentary lull before things picked up again with the anti-monitor and Grail showing up and all that. Because I did feel a pause, but it wasn't that I don't think was super long, but it was long enough where I could sort of conceive of this stuff happening. Uh yeah, for me, I thought the Shazam one was the most compelling because I think it really showed who Billy Batson is, and in the same way, that we always get the Hal story of like, you know, it's it's not the ring, it's the dude. We get to see this in Billy as well. And one of the things I wanted to call out was one of the new gods that Shazam gets is the source manipulation of Zonas. Cool, you're just gonna drop that one there, and we're not gonna talk about that. The source manipulation,
Yeah.
which we, by the way, have spoken about. Uh, the source being where all these people are coming from. You just gonna drop that and leave that alone? Like,
Which, like, the source I don't even think gets fully touched until Snyder jumps on Justice League.
wild.
I didn't care for the tie-ins too much. I liked the Batman one, and I didn't at first, but then as it progressed and you get to see Batman sort of menacing Joe Chill, that even with all this godly power and the ability to have the knowledge of anything he wants, essentially, this is still what he's busying himself with. He can't let go. And I thought that was sad. And I was able to connect with that. That felt really personal. The Green Lantern one was obviously good. But outside of that, I mean, I actually like the Superman one too, because it's funny. He just doesn't give a damn anymore. And it made me feel bad. It actually made me feel bad because the people of Metropolis are like, Superman is just a guy to them. Like he's not, but he is. Like he goes to that
Yeah.
same restaurant. They know him. It's like a celebrity who eats at, your local restaurant. And it's really cool that you get to interact with them. But when they're with you, they're
Yeah.
just a person. That's how it felt to me. And it was like sad that he goes back there and now he doesn't care about them anymore. And his friends like Jimmy Olsen,
Yeah.
are being harmed by this.
As a current Superman fan, I was almost missing the dynamic between Lois and his family and seeing how they would have reacted to that. Like, it was really only Jimmy and Mr. White, right? What's his name?
Perry.
Perry White.
Yeah.
Perry White, yes. And Perry White, and like I was hoping like he couldn't even go to like Bibbo's bar instead, or at least Bibbo is a side character. Like, I feel like the reaction of the humans from a personal level would have been more satisfying for me in that.
I don't think those people existed at this point.
No, they didn't. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, isn't Lois Lane was a huge question mark for a while in New 52.
Well, no, she obviously she was around, but at this point, like he and Wonder Woman were together, and he'd even I think at this point had quit the Daily Planet to go start his own
It was like a blog, wasn't it?
it was, yeah, it was a news blog, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to think what's the Drudge Report. Clark Kent went to start his own Drudge Report is how I remember that being talked about.
So getting towards the end of the series here, there's a huge double page spread where the heroes have all sort of, gone back to themselves and everything like that. I really like, I hate to keep harping on this, but this right here, I don't know if you guys, Superman's eyes being red, it just really rubs me the wrong fucking way. And I don't know why they would have done that right here. But he says, "We were never gods."
I like in that instance the Green Lantern Corps being there too, because that felt like Jeff Johns being like, "All right, this is like a culmination of what I'm doing right now. I need to throw in my boys."
Yeah.
Oh, you guys know me. I can't resist.
Yeah. And then I mean, yeah, it's pretty much just a race to the finish line from that point. You know, Grail fucks off. Uh Owlman, he fucks off. And then he ends up on the moon.
Yeah.
And well, he gets erased, him and Metron. They meet an interesting end.
See,
Yeah.
this is where I come in because this is where all the buzz about what happened at the end of this happened, like when this book was coming out, and like this is where like this came back on my radar. I was like, wait a minute, what happened there? Because the rumor about what Rebirth was actually about was happening at the time. And so when I read this again, I'm like, oh, this is what that story was. Okay, got it. I was happy to see Metron die. That dude was yapping throughout this whole book. I did not know that dude had a mouth on him. I thought he was more like Uatu the Watcher, where he barely talked. Like this dude
Yeah.
was complaining. He was whining. Fine, get rid of him.
Really liked Metron for what it's worth. For that reason, because he's just such an annoying douchebag. Um, if memory serves, this issue, Justice League 50, and Rebirth came out on the same day. Similar to how Flashpoint, whatever, 6 or whatever, issue 5, and Justice League 1 came out on the same day. I believe that's accurate. If it is, then that would mean that we already knew, or you could have already known, who that was, who did that to Owlman and Metron. Obviously, now in 2024, everybody should know the answer. It's Dr. Manhattan.
What? Huh?
Isn't
You
that
not knowing that answer wouldn't surprise me,
crazy?
Marco.
Hey, I give me a little more credit than that. I've read Watchmen.
I, if memory serves, I was really hyped because it was such a curveball. It was such a different angle. It opened up a world of possibilities for what could happen next.
Yeah.
Convergence, as it happens, had already occurred. It occurred in 2015, and
Yeah.
this ends in 2016. So we were already done with all that. Now it was just about like, okay, so what happens now? And the Rebirth era was very much supposed to be, you know, a return to form, and sort of Jeff Johns trying to wedge his way back into the power structure of, being an architect of DC storytelling and trying to get things back to where they had been before the New 52. Obviously, we know that that didn't quite work out that way for a variety of reasons that we are not going to talk about here. But I think as an ending point for this series, and as an ending point for the New 52 as a whole, I found it to be pretty interesting, this last teaser.
Yeah, I dug this, and I totally forgot it came out the same day as Rebirth. So that makes a lot more sense now that you mentioned that. But yeah, as an end, I'm like, all right, cool. That felt like just a damn solid DC event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that little peak of more to come, I think and more exciting things to come. Really taking it to the next level. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I remember being really excited about, or cautiously optimistic about Manhattan showing up in DC.
It was such a wild thing that I was just like, oh, they're not going to do that without a plan.
Yeah, yeah.
I was hung up on the Joker stuff, so
I believe that about you.
I feel like I remember that more so than I do the Rebirth pieces. I picked up Rebirth number one. I was like, cool. Hold on a second. We did not get this other Joker stuff addressed. What's going on with Batman?
I think if I could go back in time and interview Geoff Johns for the first time again, I would like to ask him why three Jokers? Like, why do that?
Why not 4?
Why not 7? Why not 52?
Oh, that's okay.
What?
Come on, Sean.
Why not? Yeah, why not 1?
Yeah, that's the real question.
Final thoughts?
For me, pretty damn good DC book. Like this is like dumb fun. This is the kind of stuff that I read monthly comics for. Will I ever go back to it? I don't know. I think I would go back to it and maybe in more of a context of like if I had a Geoff Johns Justice League Omnibus book and it was part of that, and I was reading the entirety of the run, maybe. But I'm glad I read it for sure.
Yeah, same. I was confident going in that this is a Geoff Johns story. This is going to be well drafted, well drawn, and so I was pretty confident about it. And I came out, I think, sated. It didn't blow me away, but I had fun during this, and I feel like that's the best you can ask for when it comes to an event, when it comes to closing down sort of an era of the universe, and for the Justice League. So fun all around for me.
Yeah, I know at the time I wasn't so hot about this, and I think I was more ready to get into the Rebirth era than anything else. So I only read bits and pieces of this. By now I would have, I would have picked up the Tom King Green Lantern special. Because this was when he was starting to make a name.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I am glad I read this. Geoff Johns' Justice League. I don't think his Justice League is necessarily a flavor for me, but the meat of what he does here and his method of sort of distilling a crisis into this event, I think really fits the New 52, and it's a fitting. I feel like it's a fitting end to that era leading into Rebirth.
I enjoyed reading this a lot. I had a blast. This was such an easy read for me. Not that largely the books we get to talk about on the book club are great, but because I've already read this, because I love the creative team so much, it felt like comfort food in a lot of ways. And I was able to pick up on some more things now just because it's been 10 years and everything like that. That made me appreciate it more in a lot of ways. I wish, like, as a send off to the New 52, I think it could have done more. But I also think that the amount of time that they had to do that more just isn't there. You can even feel it in the book, like you guys said. It kind of doesn't get to spend as much time as you would like on resolving everything that it does. And that's to say nothing of the countless other characters whose resolutions don't happen here, and who aren't represented here. There's nothing, like, it doesn't reshape DC. Convergence is what did that. So that's like, even this is the last Justice League story, and it is what leads into Rebirth, but the real end of the New 52 as a whole is more in the Convergence space. So that kind of sucks a little bit. Especially in the context of Crisis on Infinite Earths and how that was a goodbye to an era. I almost wish this had been that, or had had the time and space to do that. But man, to me, this is a crown jewel of the New 52 era, and it's a great capper to the overall story that Geoff had to tell with the League at this time. So yeah, I loved it. I would recommend it, but I think in order to read this and fully enjoy it, you got to have a lot of context. You really do.
And a lot of new context, not even context that you can rely on from, bygone eras. It's the context from 2011. So what, 6 years worth? Not even 5 years worth?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely at least that. And then I guess if you care to know more about Darkseid, who doesn't really get the best representation possible here, you would need to, dig a little bit further into the crates. Marco, can you put up a poll, please, and see how the chat feels about Darkseid? And it's funny because I want to know what you guys think about it, but you guys were the ones that chose it. Every month. Don't go anywhere, by the way. We've got more show to do. Notably, we're going to be reading your comments, and I want to dig into what you guys have to say. But you guys over on patreon.com/thecomicspals are the ones who voted for this. Darkseid War was able to sweep the competition. I think it was a tie between it was a tie for some time between this and I want to say Forever Evil, which I actually prefer to this. But be that as it may, you guys voted. This is what you voted for. And in a little bit longer, we're going to let you know what next month, October's theme is going to be. I'm sure you can guess, but we're going to keep that a mystery for just a few more minutes. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. If you're watching us right now and you are not subscribed, do you know what I think that is? I think that's a red flag.
Wow.
I'm waving my flag at you.
Wow.
Subscribe. Come on, guys.
Get the green flag. Give me the green light.
Stay tuned. My soundboard's unplugged. Sorry.
Stay tuned. If you have questions for us, send them in now. Now is when we want to really engage with that. Super chats are open. If you want to send, a super chat for support, if you enjoyed this, please do. We got one a little earlier that I wanted to tackle. Rami Darwish with the $4.99. Thanks, Rami. Where does Road to Rebirth fit in all this?
I am having trouble figuring that out. I'm looking at it, and because Rebirth 1 is the beginning of Rebirth, and that's the end of the New 52. And that came out the same day as Justice League 50. Justice League versus Suicide Squad was before this, I believe, which then, after Justice League versus Suicide Squad, that spun out a whole bunch of Road to Rebirth books, I believe. So this is almost separate from the Road to Rebirth stuff, but has a part in it at the end as a stinger that is integral to Rebirth. Man, end of New 52 is confusing as hell.
Yeah, I think this is just emblematic of the problems that DC was having at the time. A lot of different people tugging for power, trying to get out of the New 52 and get into Rebirth without really having everything lined up. Like, we're going to talk about this more on Saturday for the final part of our New 52 deep dive, but Convergence really was done as a way to allow DC to move offices, to go from New York offices to California offices, and to have stuff rolling out while they were making that transition. But there was, they published that. It's the end of the New 52, but then they were still publishing New 52 comics in the aftermath. Then Rebirth comes out. but Rebirth follows up after Justice League, but it's not a new continuity. It's very bizarre, very bizarre. I don't have a great answer for you on that one, Rami.
I think, and this is what really, this book really helped me. I don't know. It helped me focus in on what they were trying to put down. So in Rebirth, Wally West coming back is like the thing that wakes everybody up, right? There is a book that I believe is called Titans Rebirth, where it basically explains the history of the Teen Titans, both without Wally in the New 52, because the actual Teen Titan question was a massive problem in the New 52. And we sort of addressed this an episode or two ago in the main show about how there are even lines both from Tim Drake in the Teen Titans as well as Nightwing, both of them saying roughly, oh, maybe there were generations of teen heroes that got together and were teams, but who can really say? And so it was this big convoluted mess. Well, I think it was Dan Abnett did this book Titans Rebirth, and it's the definitive sort of answer to that question. So there were Teen Titans. They were roughly the Teen Titans you remember. But wait, there was somebody else that's missing. I remember somebody else being there. It was Wally. And that's what that book is about, is that missing key. Oh, non-binary bomb says Titans Hunt is the name of that book. Thank you very much. That book is the missing key alongside DC Rebirth #1 or whatever that wakes everyone up, and to me made everything perfectly clear.
As clear as the New 52 could be. 40 Faced says Teen Titans and Superman continuity was just totally unhinged at this point. No kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, the way, like, Superman specifically, whoa. Think about, like, oh man.
That was,
think about how. Go ahead.
Convergence had 90s Superman who had continued on, had a kid, and then they merged.
You think?
Yeah.
It's weird because they did, but then, like, yeah, it's very convoluted. It's very, very convoluted. We'll talk more about that on Saturday.
I wanted to bring up a comment here. It was, oh geez, I lost it. Okay, it was Omni Nation Comics said, I loved it, referring to Darkseid War. It's just fun. I was just coming back into comics at the time. Reading this made me feel like a kid again at the time.
Like a kid again. Oof.
Childlike wonder, Cale. When's the last time you felt it?
Listen, I've been 67 since I was 12, so.
I feel you. Sometimes comics just give you that vibe where you just have that, like, wow, what can, like, anything can happen. It's exciting. It's fresh. I feel you.
I almost feel in a way it's very similar to the last book club we read, Annihilation, in terms of like what it's doing. Annihilation was doing it for Cosmic Marvel, but it really is just like, hey, get the biggest bad you could put on the team, and bring everyone in, and just have fun.
Dan Trudeau says there are things I really like in it, but it feels hollow. Too much stuffed in, and it loses the human elements that usually keep John's events dramatically interesting. I can see that. I don't agree with that, but I can see how someone could feel that way.
I think definitely when you compare it to Infinite Crisis, and again, well, I don't know. You know, Infinite Crisis had almost the entire DC stable, you know, almost every character in the history of DC, but they still managed to cram decent little human moments in there, especially between the Trinity, and then you get your Superboy dying, and Nightwing being the only person that's there when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, even Forever Evil has a lot of really small human moments. I think about Lex and Bizarro. I
Yes.
believe it's Bizarro.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good stuff. Uh Luna says, while it had a strong start and I'm happy a lot of Rebirth storylines now make sense, I felt this book was just okay. It dipped during the end. I mean, it's not metal, but it's just okay.
I'd love to know people's thoughts on Metal because I have thoughts on that.
Metal was fun, if I remember
Metal
correctly. If
is
I remember
the
it, I had fun moments and I had some what the hell is going on moments.
it's the airbrushed painting on the side of a van of event books, which I think was the purpose.
I think that was where I actually dropped off doing reviews. So I didn't read it. I'd do a metal book club. I'd do a metal book club.
I
I don't
feel
think
like
I'll enjoy it, but
If we ever do like a Scott Snyder month, that'd be on the table for sure.
it's October. It's coming up.
Not
Just
for us.
saying.
The next one is not Scott.
Just saying. Are you sure? I feel like we're gonna announce something
I
we
made
could
a-
make a last minute decision.
right,
right
getting
now,
Photoshop
live. I have one here from Ray. He says, I will say that I had fonder memories of Forever Evil than Darkseid War, though I'd forgotten most of both. Rereading, though, Darkseid War was definitely the better event. Fabok really made it.
Mm.
And that was that was also part of another conversation where he had mentioned that, where was it? He's glad he read it first. It helped with Darkseid War a lot. It gave plot threads that started in Forever Evil that were resolved in Darkseid War. One of the examples he gave was Superwoman being pregnant. So yeah, and cool that, because I feel like I remember Forever Evil being the bigger, cooler event. So it's interesting that you say this ended up being executionally better.
Forever Evil is my favorite DC event right now. I still need to reread Infinite Crisis because I think that might take it over. I'm not sure. Oh, well, Doomsday Clock is perfect. But I don't know, man. I think that each one sort of has their Forever Evil has certain flaws. Like it's got to me a flaw, the Nightwing bit, which is just it has the stink of video in it. Um Man, knowing what I know now, it's like, dude, Geoff Johns would never have chosen to do that. Dan would definitely make that happen.
Yeah.
You're talking about like the Dick torture, right? The torture of
Yes.
Dick Grayson. Sorry.
I think the dick torture happens there too. But I think in Forever Evil, I think what really I remember being like caught, like genuinely caught by surprise when the Crime Syndicate comes out and the Atom betrayal happened, and they vaporized whoever it was, and it was like I remember thinking like, the New 52 hadn't done much for me at the time, but when that happened, I was like, whoa.
Hell
Because
yeah.
even what I'd known about the Crime Syndicate from the pre-52, like it was just your main 7 leaguers. The Atom, I don't think was ever considered. So for there to be a Crime Syndicate Atom, like, never crossed my mind.
Fuck, man, you're making me want to read that again.
It almost won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man, because I'm really talking about Trinity War because I feel like what Cale's talking about is the stuff that leads right into Forever Evil.
Yeah.
And I haven't read Trinity War back since then. And I remember popping for that same exact scenario without any of the context
Yeah.
that you have.
Yeah.
Man, that was cool. I want to answer this question from 40 Face because I've seen it come up a time or two. Really want to hear the pal's take on this concept of DARKSEID compared to Final Crisis version. Well, first of all, 40 Face, thank you. I haven't seen her name before, so appreciate you commenting.
They've been around, yeah.
Um, I look, I don't understand Final Crisis. I am on record with that. But one thing I can tell you is that DARKSEID in Final Crisis feels like the final boss. And he comes across every bit as imposing and powerful and godly as you would expect a character named DARKSEID to be. That being said, I think this version is inferior, but by design, because there's a bigger fish, and that bigger fish is really the Anti-Monitor. And then sort of both of them are subservient to the Justice League really taking center stage. So I don't know if either one is serviced as well as they could have been.
That being said, do you think it being called Darkseid War is unfair?
No.
Or is it there just to be like, hey, all right, well, we need something to put on a spine, and this can swerve people?
I think it's appropriate. It was a war about DARKSEID.
It was a war about Darkseid, barely featuring him, but it was about him.
Baby Darkseid, though.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Implications around him,
And the
all
power
the
that-
factors that play.
Power
Right.
vacuum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense actually.
Let's answer a couple more questions and then we'll start to close things down. Mike, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I've been collecting them. I'll just throw a couple out here. Cliff Hopkins says, finally catching y'all live. Love the channel. Excited to hear y'all's thoughts about the story. This is one of the first books I read when I was fresh in my New God, specifically Mr. Miracle Deep Dive. Thanks so much for that, Cliff Hopkins. What's up, hot dog? Omni Nation Comics, when he first showed up, he was very excited about Geoff Johns. Loved this storyline. It felt like Geoff Johns picked up some toys and had fun with them, making the JLA into new gods. No, making the JLA into gods. So much fun. Haha. Thanks for that. What's up, hot dog?
I'd like to call this one out because it's a direct DC. Pay attention. Thanks to the Comics Pals, a direct subscriber to DC Universe Infinite. John B says, I got the free trial of DC Universe to read this. It convinced me not to cancel the free trial, and I'm likely going to buy the new Forever Evil Omnibus out the start of next year. Hey, you're welcome.
We'll take a Dropbox link whenever you want to just pass it along.
Thanks so much.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
We don't want to be a bother.
Thank you, John B.
Link, though.
John B also said, reading Forever Evil and Darkseid War made me more hyped for what's going on in the current Absolute Power event.
Oh.
Yes. I'm not going to say anything more about that because there are spoilers abound. But yes.
Oh,
Are
interesting.
there really? Damn, that seems early. All right.
Yeah. I caught a panel that felt like an exact looking forward Absolute Batman panel, but I don't have it on me. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just on that, I was going to say thank God for the DC spoiler channel, the Marvel spoiler channel, and for everybody in the Discord who follows protocol. You are kind people.
Yeah, definitely.
The last one I want to hit, Gabriel Alarcon says, Superman's eyes red? Sounds like a red flag.
I am totally with you, dude. I would have been waving this fucking flag. If we had the show back then, I would have been waving this flag. You know what I would have been doing? I would have been so mad about it. I would have been so frustrated that I would have been waving two flags. That's what I would have
red flags?
You would have looked like air traffic control during a Heroes in
fucking
Crisis.
land in a plane.
Two red eyes, two red flags.
Wow.
Speaking of landing planes, let's bring this baby home. We've got an announcement to make for the next month of, the book club and noms and voting and everything else. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the process, every month we put up a nomination poll and we have a theme. You guys nominate any book that matches that theme. The 4 books with the most nominations will make it to the Patreon poll round where the patrons get to vote. Anybody who is a patron of ours gets to vote. So there is no like monetary floor. As long as you're a member of the Patreon, you can vote. The bare minimum tier. And the book with the most votes, just like Darkside War got, will be the winner. This month, or rather the month of October, I should say, the theme is superhero horror. We're getting spooky in October, and we figure we'll continue to do what we do best, which is superhero talk, but mix it in with a little genre. So send us your nominations to our Discord server, patreon.com/thecomicspals, youtube.com/thecomicspals under the community tab. Your nominations with the books that fit that format. There has to be a horror bend to it. You can't nominate like just for a random example. You couldn't nominate, Final Crisis. There's nothing horrific about that except my lack of understanding. That would not be a book that would be appropriate for that. But something like, throw out a good example, somebody.
Marowak Oscuro says Dark Web.
I
guess.
A Constantine, like an older
Hellblazer,
Constantine,
yeah.
probably counts.
Ooh.
Who was it? Dan asks if Hellboy counts. I think so.
I would.
Yeah,
I would consider
yeah.
that.
and make it a good one. Make it a good scary one.
Grim Hunt.
I'm looking to get my pants scared off.
My pants are never on during podcasts, so
Listen, I show up. OSHA, work safe, appropriate.
sure.
This is I don't want to police it too much. Just do your best to really think about what is a story that prominently features horror, dark themes, dark elements, spooky shit. Stick to that mold and we will make it work. All right.
C.W. Gordon, The Silver Coin is not a superhero book.
Yeah. It's got to have superhero
Horror, not just horror. I like where your head's at, but it's got to be superhero horror. And Aaron, I swear to God, we're not doing Night Terrors. Get that out of here.
That'll be my last day.
I'm thinking like Marvel Zombies, DC versus vampires.
Yeah.
Ghost
Okay.
Rider. Steve
All right.
Canara shouts out Ghost Rider.
If it was Marvel Zombies, though, that's probably gonna be like a half-hour episode. I don't know if there's much meat
I
on that bone.
I would love some killer Ghost Rider. Oh, I would love some Ghost
Jason
Rider.
Aaron's, man, real good stuff.
Yeah. It's Ben Percy right now, right?
Yeah.
It's real
Yeah.
good, dude.
That shit is fire. Yeah.
The hood,
totally.
the hood one. He did like a hood miniseries. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice House on the Lake. No, unfortunately
No.
not, John. There's no super heroics in that.
This is the perfect time for all of you Mucktopians to vote for Swamp Thing. Thing.
I'm gonna throw it out there. I know that's the new 52 month is over, but Rot World.
Oh.
That's some horror.
Yep.
Oh, you know what would be good? Some juicy Etrigan.
Oh yeah, let's do the whole podcast in iambic pentameter.
Oh, that would rule.
That does sound fun, actually.
You guys have fun.
Sean's on vacation that week.
Venom the Madness. I haven't read that, Aaron Ruiz. I don't even know what that is.
My thing is like, if there's enough votes for it, there would be a general understanding that from everyone that they've kind of come to a consensus.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. All right, guys. The next time we're going to be live with you is this Thursday for Pals Pulls, 6 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you guys there. We're going to have a great time as we always do. So make sure you show up for that. Thank you to everybody who voted for Darkside War in the book club, but also everybody who took the time to nominate, took the time to vote. I hope that you guys will do the same thing for our October selections. Please do. We will have those posts up for you guys soon where you can share your nominations with us. Thank you for watching.